Namaste, good morning, and welcome to another one of my videos. This is actually going to be an updated version of relationships from a Buddhist point of view. I really was I was looking at the original video that I did, and I think I was made the original part 2 video that I did, and I was looking at it and listening to what I was saying, and I think that I made a few relevant points, but overall I don't think that I was really being very helpful. My very first video, which was more from a side, which was more of a view of relationships in terms of when you're having issues with a breakup, and I wanted to kind of just make another video on the opposite side of the spectrum, and sort of update the original one that I did for part 2. So this will be the actual part 2, and I'll probably go ahead and delete my other video for part 2. Now, also today happens to be my mother's birthday, and she happens to be a Christian, or considers herself as such, and my stepfather and her have been together for 17 plus years, and the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I wanted to a little bit more talk about how I personally see things, not only just from a Buddhist point of view, but also just kind of from a overall something that I think is just very relative, just in a general sense, that how two people can make it happen regardless of what your religion is, and specifically also that how two people from completely different religions can stay together for 17 plus years. My mom, like I said, happens to be Christian, and my stepfather happens to be Jewish. Now, how they work around this, basically, is that they just simply don't really talk about it that much. My stepfather considers himself to be Jewish, but he doesn't really practice anything. He recognizes, I think, certain Jewish holidays and certain things that are, I guess, important from that religious belief. And my mom definitely believes in God, and she definitely believes in Christ. But together, they don't really practice as such. My mom doesn't really go to church, and things like, of that nature, and my stepdad does not go to temple or anything, so and they don't really talk about it. They both believe in God, and I think that overall they believe in the same God. It's just that, obviously, with the difference of my mom believing in Jesus Christ as the Son of God, as a Savior, whereas my stepfather believes that all men are sons of God. And I come from a Christian background, but I converted to Buddhism, of course, probably, definitely within the past 3 years, as I've mentioned in my introduction video. But anyway, the way that I see this is that it works for them. It doesn't really work for other people from two different faiths, and I think that one of the reasons for that is because if you have people who are very religious, or even if they don't call themselves religious, but they practice from their tradition very seriously, and they take these things, in a literal sense, that this is the right path. And sometimes, unfortunately, I think that certain Christian groups or certain Christian circles believe that it is a sin or that it is wrong to essentially, definitely to marry a non-Christian, and that somehow this is sort of a very bad thing to do. And I think for other people who don't really see it as a sin or wrong, they just kind of have this more of a viewpoint that, okay, well, I'm a Christian, and even though I love my partner very much, you know, it's concerning because they're not, and I'm, you know, overall concerned about their soul because if they, you know, don't, you know, get quote-unquote saved, that they will end up going to hell, and I want to spend, you know, eternity in heaven with them, and that kind of thing. And when you have that kind of view, it's also, you know, difficult to make it work out. But as a Buddhist, we are very Buddhism is a lot more. There's not really a lot of dogma involved, minus the idea of nirvana and the idea of how karma and reincarnation works. But we're very open-ended. It's actually not really something. Buddha was not a god, and he is not a god, and so it's not something that, you know, there's not commandments. You know, all the things that we actually practice as Buddhists is not from Buddha basically commanding us to do so. And I would say that it's not really something that we have to concern about in terms of being judged and being rewarded for obeying commands. So Buddhism is very open-ended in terms of relationships. The plus side about this is that in Buddhism also that we have to practice this idea of non-self, and I think I mentioned something about that in one of my other videos, and I plan on doing a video specifically on non-self, or basically I plan on doing a video about that, and of course I may end up, you know, throwing in one or two other topics, as I seem to have been doing so far. But so it's very open-ended, and we don't really have to worry about that. With the things that we practice as Buddhists, being compassionate, and the idea of non-self, is that we are able. And also, let me back up for a second, and also because we, you know, the first noble truth, which is the very basics of Buddhism, you know, just having a kind of a glance at the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and things of that nature, very, you know, Buddhism 101. These are kind of some of the things that you learn about right away. The first noble truth is that life is suffering, and so with a combination of having an understanding of the first noble truth, which is life is suffering, and also combining that with the practice and having having a view of non-self, this actually allows us to be that much more compassionate to our partners, regardless of what religion they are. And the reason for that is because it's not really something that we have to concentrate on, you know, well, you're one religion and I'm another religion, and, you know, it's really bad that, you know, we can't be together because, you know, my God or whatever says no. It allows us to actually focus on the things that we actually have in common, and be very open-minded and very open, and have a very open heart towards the other person in terms of our differences. But it brings us together because we practice loving compassion meditation, and we practice the idea of non-self, and we contemplate and meditate on that. And having an understanding of the First Noble Truth is very crucial. And so when you you can actually start to not have a dualistic idea of between yourself and other people and other beings, really. And so these practices allows us to come together and basically have a very compassionate relationship towards the other person, and have a better understanding of their needs, and also their own suffering. And that in turn is going to want to make us sorry, try to look over here. That in turn will help us to have a very loving relationship, to where there's not really a whole lot of judgments. Probably because we are having this idea of non-self. And so we understand that life is suffering, and we have an understanding of where that comes from, that really all beings suffer, and that just kind of gives us a very that kind of allow us, that the more that we practice that, to have a very wholesome relationship. And of course, I don't want to just talk about suffering only. I don't want to give you the wrong idea that relationships are nothing but suffering, because relationships are a part of people's lives. But some of the other things as well is that it really there's really not an issue of we can't be with somebody because they're from another religion. Now, I would say that it probably is a little bit easier to have a relationship in terms of the same kinds of interests, or the same kinds, if you are, as an example, if you're a Buddhist, it could be, I say easier in a very loose way, but just to kind of use that word here for this example, easier in terms of you and your partner already have those things established in your lives, and you have that in common, so you can do things such as you could do meditation together, you could read the suttas together, you can you could do whatever from your tradition, certain there are different chants that you do from whatever from different Buddhist circles and traditions, and different things like that. And you can talk about these things, and you can go to retreats, you can go to meditation retreats together, and all of those things that you really can do together as a Buddhist couple. And the same thing with Christians. You can go to church together, pray together, you can read the Bible together, etc., etc. So from that point of view, I can understand that and see that these things can be a little bit easier, and certain things that you can kind of give each other strength from kind of that point. But I would have to say that maybe just from my own opinion, being a Buddhist, as I kind of see this as it's not really, at least for me, and probably for other Buddhists as well, it's not really the factor that I would say is so important that the other person has to be a Buddhist, that would be the ultimate deciding factor whether or not I'm going to be with somebody. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this video here, and I'm going to continue. So this would be part 2, and the next video will be part 3. Thank you for your patience, and may all beings be well and happy, and start video number 3. Thank you. Namaste.